Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Wednesday, March the 2nd, 2022. It's 3:30 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting of the Business Utilities to order. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Representatives Alexander, Calfee, Hazelwood, Hodges, Holsclaw, Johnson, Manis, Thompson, Vaughn, Vidal, Zachary, Chairman Boyd.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members, before we get started today, does anyone have a personal order? If not, we'll go ahead and get started. We do have a few administrative items. Item number 2 has been rolled 1 week. Item number 3 has been rolled 1 week. Item number 4 has been rolled 1 week. Item number 5 has been rolled 1 week. Item number 7 has been taken off of notice, and since this is its third calendar, without objection, it is referred to the special calendar, which we published with the final calendar. Item number 12 has been rolled 1 week. That concludes our administrative business, so let's go ahead and get started on the calendar. And is Chairman Curcio in here, or is he running the bill? So we're going to roll him to the hill. And we will go ahead and get started on item number 6. That is Representative Vidal. Representative Vidal, you're recognized.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Representative Vidal, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Boyd. Good afternoon, everyone. I bring before you Senate Joint Resolution 954, which celebrates the centennial of the Jones Act. Created in the early 1920s by the U.S. Congress, the Jones Act requires vessels carrying cargo on American waterways, including the Tennessee, Cumberland, and Mississippi rivers, to be built in America and crewed by American mariners and owned by American companies. The maritime industry is key to Tennessee's strength and security, and maritime laws ensure a level playing field for all Tennessee businesses. Tennessee's 950-mile-long network of navigable waterways makes it a critical hub in the nation's transportation system. Tennessee is home to over 20,000 maritime jobs and supports $1.24 billion in workers' income. The current global pandemic has demonstrated the critical importance of maintaining a resilient domestic industry and transportation services network in Tennessee. This resolution affirms the importance of the Jones Act and helps celebrate its 100th anniversary across Tennessee and companies and employees that it provides for. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Vidal, for that explanation. Members, you have heard the explanation of Senate Joint Resolution 0954. Do we have any questions for the sponsor? Questions being called. Without objection, we are voting to send Senate Joint Resolution 954 to full commerce. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it, and your resolution is going to full commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Next up is item number 8. That's House Bill 2697 by Representative Parkinson. It looks like he is in another committee, so we're going to roll that to the hill and keep moving. Next up is item number 9. That's House Bill 2811 by Representative Hardaway. Looks like he's absent. We're going to roll that one to the hill and keep moving. Item number 10. That's House Bill 2246 by our Chairman Vaughn. Do we have a motion and a second for the chairman? We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion. We have a second. Chairman Vaughn, you are recognized.
You're making it hard out here for a fellow. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and my fellow committee members.
And Chairman Vaughn, looks like we have an amendment on this one. What drafting code are you showing on that?
I am showing, stand by, 013509.
That is what I'm showing. Members, do we have a motion and a second? Chairman Vaughn, you are recognized on your amendment.
And I believe the amendment makes the bill, so if you want to get it attached, or however you want to handle that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, we are voting to add amendment 013509 to the bill. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Ayes have it. The amendment is on the bill. Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized on the bill as amended.
Thank you, sir. This bill was in response to critical infrastructure needs across our state. We're seeing now how we have issues with our supply chain, particularly due to international events. Sometimes we've had interruptions in supply chain due to shutdowns, malware attacks, other things we've seen with the Colonial Pipeline. But what this bill will allow us to do, and hey, I know that these days preemption is a word that's not looked favorably upon, but this bill would preempt localities from creating zoning laws that prohibit the creation of critical infrastructure such as pipelines through their communities. What it does not do is it does not restrict their zoning, but it does allow pipelines, other types of energy-related fields to be able to claim this exemption and to not have to deal with a patchwork of regulations, local regulations, as they cross our state. This is a situation where it's bigger than just a community. This is vital to our nation's infrastructure. And so what we're trying to do here is to, and I think the words in the ordinance or the bill are particularly critical that I want to read so that y'all understand what it is that we're proposing. It says a local action of a political subdivision is preempted and void if the local action directly or indirectly is or acts as a de facto prohibition of the siting or restriction, prohibition of impairment or construction, expansion, or maintenance of energy, industrial, or related transportation infrastructure. When determining whether a local action results in a de facto prohibition, these are the factors that are considered. A fee imposed, an unreasonable time frame for action, and then the local action's effect on the feasibility of the project. Here's what it doesn't do. The section does not prevent or preempt a board of a political subdivision that owns or operates and directly controls an electric or natural gas utility from promulgating necessary rules, regulations, or policies related to the utility subject to its control. Or a local action that is state authorized, ministerial in nature, pertaining to land use, which would include zoning, generally applicable to all types of commercial activities and necessary to provide a public benefit, as long as that local action facilitates to the greatest extent possible the siting and construction and expansion of the infrastructure that we're discussing. And then it also does not create, or excuse me, it says that the section does not prevent a local action that affects facilities for the collection, conversion, and use of solar energy. So anyway, it does not expand or alter the jurisdiction of a governmental entity charged with oversight of public utilities. And then the wind facility bill that we passed a few years ago, this does not address that at all. So, Mr. Chairman, that's what this law does. It's looking to stabilize and protect the ability for goods and services to be moved across the particularly energy goods and services across our state via pipeline systems and other subject energy infrastructure requirements. So that's what we're doing here.
Chairman, thank you for that explanation. Members, do we have any questions? I've got Representative Thompson. Go ahead. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wanted to ask, because I know you're familiar with this issue because we live in the same county, but the Byhalia pipeline last year, it was going through low-income areas adjacent to neighborhoods, and there was an uproar and an ordinance to prevent that by the city of Memphis. Would this bill have prevented something like that from happening?
Chairman Devon, you recognize?
I'm not sure that it would have prevented that from happening because I'm not sure the state of those ordinances. I know there was discussion of ordinances and zone. What this would do was this would be equivalent to saying that an approved use within a certain zone district could be other things other than a pipeline. That would be how this doesn't mean that the city of Memphis or whoever couldn't put requirements on how they allow pipelines to operate within there, but it does prevent a de facto provision. And just for the record, Representative Thompson, that pipeline wasn't just going to run through low-income neighborhoods in Memphis. It was also stretching across Shelby County and coming out near the Collierville area. So it was not, that was not the only place that that pipeline had been sited.
Representative Thompson.
Okay, yeah, excuse me, and I do remember that now. Another major uproar was going through southwest Memphis, though. Without knowing this bill, without really understanding it right now, I'm just going to pass on the bill and study it further, and we can discuss it further in full if it reaches that.
Chairman Devon.
And I'll be happy to discuss it with you offline, because what this is doing more than anything is making sure that energy and industrial products can move across our state without one locality deciding that it's going to intervene or interrupt the entire flow. I think these days we can see it more than ever that it is in some cases, I know it's a case of economic security, and in some cases it could be national security, depending upon what it feeds. So from that standpoint, that's how we're looking at this. This is not necessarily, I think if anything, the Memphis situation alerted those folks in this industry and to what could happen if planned projects and input for throughput can be interrupted by municipalities somewhere along the way. And so that's what this is approaching. This, again, it's not to step on the toes of local zoning ordinances.
Representative Thompson.
Well, thank you for that explanation. Yeah, we possibly should discuss this in the interim, but and I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you to a large extent. I'm also thinking we should be sensitive to neighborhoods, to people as well, and I know that sometimes we can work through compromises, but I think both the individual neighborhoods and the overall need for energy being transported in a proper way are both important. Thank you.
Chairman Vaughn, anything else? Members, do we have any other questions for Chairman Vaughn? I don't have anybody on the list, and the question has been called. Members, we are voting to send House Bill 2246 to full commerce. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no.
Pass.
The ayes have it. House Bill 2246 is on its way to full commerce. Chairman Vaughn, you were recognized on item number 11. Actually, we need it's House Bill 2608. We have a motion. We have a second. You are recognized on your bill. And Chairman Vaughn, I do see an amendment. What drafting code do you have?
Mr. Chairman, that's drafting code 013742.
That is what I'm showing. Members, do we have a motion and a second on the amendment? Motion. Okay. Chairman Vaughn, we are on the amendment. You are recognized.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This bill is an opportunity to seek the most bang for our buck out of our broadband investment dollars. Initially, this bill had taken the form of not just a broadband sales and use tax exemption, but also had been crafted in such a way that it was also going to expand the footprint of electric co-ops. But we struck that through the amendment because I'm hopeful that we can wait until we have maps showing the extent that broadband has been distributed throughout our state, so we can make strong strategic decisions with regards to who's going to provide the unserved. But since that was struck from this bill, what remains in it, and it was struck due to the Amendment 013742, what remains is the sales and use tax cut for us to be able to get the most out of our money. If we send $50 million to a broadband firm and then take back 10% in sales and use tax, we're not fully deploying all of that money. And some of this money is being provided through federal dollars and federal grants. And so this just allows us to get the most onto the playing field for those installers who are purchasing materials. It has been done before to a lesser extent, but this will allow us to fully utilize the money that we're out there. And I do realize this has a significant fiscal note. And what I would ask this committee to do is to pass us along to get us into shape with, so we could go to the Finance Subcommittee and discuss it with them, the merits of it. But that's all this bill does at this point.
Chairman Vaughn, thank you for that explanation. Members, do we have any questions for Chairman Vaughn? And Chairman Vaughn, there is a sunset on this. Is that right? Can you mention that, please?
Yes, sir. This would be valid from 2023 to 2028.
Okay. All right, members, you've heard the explanation. We are voting on the amendment. That is amendment number 013742. We're voting to put that on the bill. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is on the bill. Chairman Vaughn, do you have any further explanation for your amended bill?
No, sir, I don't think I can help it anymore at this point.
Okay. Members, we are voting to send House Bill 2608 to full commerce. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Bill passes. It's on its way to full commerce. Thank you, Chairman Vaughn. Next up is item number 13 by Chairman Boyd. I'm going to roll that to the hill and keep moving, and we're going to go just a little bit out of order. Representative Parkinson, you were recognized on item number 8. That's House Bill 2697.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee. It's everyone's.
Motion.
Thank you, sir. It's everyone's favorite type of bill, the cosmetology.
We have
bill.
a motion. We have a second. Representative Parkinson, looks like you have an amendment.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the amendment rewrites the bill, Mr. Chair. If I
What
can-
drafting code are you showing?
I got 012931. Is that what you got?
That is what I'm showing. Representative Parkinson, members, can we get a motion and a second on the amendment?
Motion.
We have a motion. We have a second. Representative Parkinson, you are recognized on your amendment.
And thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. Honestly, so this bill, and I did work with the cosmetology board on this bill. So what it does is this. Right now, under law, you can go and get your instructor's license as a barber, or you can get your instructor's license as a cosmetologist. Two separate licenses. What this does is allows an option of combining both licenses because it's the same thing being taught in the instructor's classes. They're only teaching how to teach. They're not teaching you necessarily the techniques of cosmetology or the techniques of barbering. And so what this does is if you become an instructor in cosmetology, you can go back and pick up the differences in the classes between barbering and cosmetology, which I think is straight razoring and barbering that cosmetologists don't get in their instruction. You can pick up those classes and then you'll have a dual license where you can instruct in barbering or cosmetology. So it helps to streamline what we're doing to make it easier for and provide more instructors for barbering and cosmetology. That's what the bill does.
Thank you for that
And
explanation.
it's non-controversial. It's not natural hair.
Thank you for that explanation, Representative Parkinson. Members, do we have any questions on the amendment? If not, we're voting to add amendment 012931 to the bill. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Ayes have it. The amendment goes on the bill. Representative Parkinson, do you have any further explanation?
I can't sell it any more than that.
Members, we are voting to send House Bill 2697 to full commerce. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Ayes have it. Representative Parkinson, your bill is on its way to full commerce.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations.
And thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen.
Members, that brings us back to item number 1. That is House Bill 2782 by Chairman Curcio. Do we have a motion and a second? You do. We have a motion. Do we have a second? All right. Chairman Curcio, you were recognized, and it looks like you have an amendment. What drafting code are you showing?
I have amendment coded 13674. I wish to move.
That is what I'm showing. Members, do we have a motion and a second on the amendment? Motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. All right. Chairman Curcio, you're recognized on your amendment.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, committee. Members, I'm here today to talk about private property rights and as they pertain to short-term rentals. And I don't think I need to explain what short-term rentals are, but in case anybody's been living under a rock for the last 15 years. No, I'm just kidding. This is where you can rent out your home on a short-term basis or a home that you own on a short-term basis on various, social platforms to be able to do that. What we're seeking to do here is to provide some stability and some clarity for property owners. And we're really talking about two buckets of owners. So basically, if you think about somebody who's bought a home in an area that they think this will be popular, and they're renting that home out on these various platforms as a way to make money. That's kind of one bucket of owners. A second bucket of owners are people who own their own property. So these are owner-occupied homes, and they want to maybe rent out the basement, rent out a back house, rent out a mother-in-law suite, for example, some people call them, and do that as a way to generate extra income. I know we had a lot of friends when my wife and I were young, married couple without any money or prospects that would rent out, say, the, spare bedroom in their house or the upstairs in order to help, make a little extra income to save up for a vacation or something like that. So you've really got two buckets of owners here. You've got folks who've invested in real estate in a prime area, and they think they can make money off of tourism, folks coming in and out. And then you've got owner-occupied units, the mother-in-law suite, the basement, the back house, that kind of thing. So what this bill seeks to do is to kind of stabilize the market across the state so that folks have some stability. It also has a section in here that protects transfers. So right now we're having a problem in some areas of the state where if I'm doing estate planning and I set up a trust, for example, my wife and I own a property that we've got a short-term rental permit for, and we put that into a trust or into some other legal instrument, it has to be retitled. Well, that's knocking us out of that short-term permit in a lot of cases. So we're seeing where those permits are being deleted off the books simply because we needed to do something for an estate plan, for example. I also want to talk about, in this bill, we have protected municipalities who have outright banned short-term rentals. So there's language in this bill that we believe, and we've checked to make sure that this does what we think it does. But if your city banned short-term rentals once upon a time, said we're just not going to allow them here, this bill seeks to preserve that. So if you don't want them, you don't ever have to have them. But what the bill goes on to do is to say, if at any point in time you allowed a short-term rental permit. So I'm not talking about when it happened sort of history, if you will. In other words, back when people were renting out a room on Craigslist before any of these, social platforms existed. We're not talking about that, but we're talking about if you as a municipality met and you voted to create a permit and create a process for short-term rentals. If you've ever done that, then you've got to preserve that property right for those folks that live in your municipality from now on. Doesn't mean you can't regulate it. Doesn't mean you can't, set up reasonable permitting structures and require certain things of those owners, but you can't just outright ban it if you've already allowed it. So the idea is there, we don't want to pull the rug out from under those property owners. And especially, it's easy to sort of think about, okay, well, woe is me, you bought an investment property and now you're not able to make the profit on it you thought. But think for a moment about those owner-occupied units. I mean, my house is my house, and if I want to rent out a bedroom to somebody, that ought to be between me and my wife and them, right? And so having to go and beg some city bureaucrat whether or not my mother-in-law can live in my mother-in-law suite is really not, I think, what anybody intended when we look at this. It certainly doesn't meet the common sense standard. So that's all I've got for now. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you for that explanation. Members, you've heard the explanation and the amendment. Do we have any questions? We've got Chairman Zachary. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, and I had already discussed this with Chairman Curcio, I do have an untimely filed amendment that I'm going to be putting on if this bill moves forward next week. Over the last couple of days, based on the length and detail of this amendment, it has been very difficult for some of our cities to be able to go through and to be able to determine what kind of impact this will be. What kind of impact this will be to local communities, because I would say you would use the word stability and clarity. Mm-hmm. I think right now this has done just the opposite for many of our smaller communities. And I have an amendment with the blessing of the following communities: Collierville, Germantown, Brentwood, Franklin, Farragut, which is where I live, Maryville, Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, Spring Hill, Alcoa, Goodlettsville, Oak Ridge, Kingsport, and Johnson City, that would all be like to be amended out of this piece of legislation because of the impact their legal representation feels it will how it will impact their community. And so that is an amendment that, again, it's untimely filed, Mr. Chairman, and I recognize that. So it's something that we'll discuss at a later time. But because of that and because of that confusion, my community in particular, Farragut, they don't feel like, based on the language in section 6 and the date used, they feel like because of ordinances we've already passed that passed in 2019, they feel like they're not excluded from this because of things they've done in the past. And some of those communities that I listed are in the same position. And so I understand the target of this legislation, but I also understand how this impacts the individual community. And absolutely, I'm all for property owners' rights, but I also understand too, there's a reason that people all across our state move into a community like a Farragut or an Oak Ridge. And there's a reason I live in Farragut, because I want to live in a community. I don't want rentals. I don't want some of the things that go on in other parts of our state or other cities. Those are things I don't want in the community in which I live. And I don't want the house next to me or the house across the street from me to be put on any kind of short-term rental. So I make the choice to live in that community. And if I want to live somewhere else and I want to have the opportunity to rent out that property, I can move in another community where those ordinances are not in place. But again, I'll stick to Farragut in particular. We have those ordinances in place, and people know that when they move into our community. So to now come in with a bill that's targeted at Davidson and Nashville, to then come in and say that has statewide application and remove that, that significantly impacts the people in Farragut, Franklin, Brentwood, Germantown, Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, Spring Hill, Alcoa, Goodlettsville, Oak Ridge, Kingsport, Johnson City, and many others. And so because of that, I can't support this piece of legislation. And you and I have talked about that. And it's also, and Chairman Curcio, this is in no way a reflection on you, but this is another case of a piece of legislation being brought that's targeting a particular area that's brought by a legislator in which it doesn't impact. And so that frustrates me. And it frustrated me the last time this piece of legislation was brought by a legislator who lived in a community in which would not be impacted by this. And so I am in a community that's impacted by this. And so it's easy to say, well, the cities, I mean, sometimes the cities overregulate and they do these things in municipalities. But while my municipality is against it, I live in that community and I don't support it. And so for those reasons, I do oppose the bill. And if, depending on the posture of this bill and what happens moving forward, I do plan on bringing that amendment on behalf of the cities I mentioned, depending on what happens moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Members, before we, and the list is growing, I've got a few of you. Since the amendment actually makes the bill, let's go ahead and get the amendment on the bill, and then we'll continue to the debate here. So, members, we are voting now to add Amendment 013674 to the bill. All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The bill is amended. Now we are back on discussion of the bill as amended, and next on my list is Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of clarified questions for the sponsor. You talked about owner-occupied. Can you, for the record, explain how that would be defined?
The definition of owner-occupied?
Chairman Kersey, are you recognized?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. So in Section 3 of the amendment, owner-occupied property means owned by one or more natural persons, not owned or co-owned by a business entity, and used as principal residence by at least one natural person. And then I can further define principal residence because I think that's relevant. If you don't mind, I'll continue.
Yeah, and that really, I
Chair
think,
Lady
gets to the
Hazelwood, you
point.
recognized.
That gets to the point, I believe.
Okay.
Chairman Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Principal residence means the residential dwelling of a natural person in which the person's habitation is fixed and to which, whenever the person is absent, the person has a definite intention to return. If a natural person has multiple residential dwellings that satisfy the definitions set out in this subdivision, then the person may only claim one residential dwelling located in this state as the natural person's principal residence. It is presumed that a residential dwelling is a natural person's principal residence if the address of the residential dwelling is the same as the address on the person's voter registration or Internal Revenue Service tax reporting W-2 form from the prior 12-month period. And my notes tell me that that is the same definition, which is the standard for principal residence in Tennessee law for registering to vote. So that's where we've mirrored that from.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you recognize.
So would a trust be a business entity or a natural person? How would a trust be? Where would it fall when you're looking at these kinds of properties if a property was held in trust?
Chairman Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My law degree came from Google, but my understanding is that a trust is an entity. It's a person without a heartbeat, but it doesn't seem to me, and I don't think it's our intention, I could be wrong, but the trust language doesn't apply to that person's primary dwelling.
So just
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you recognize.
Thank you. Just to be clear, what we're saying is that it have to be the real legal residence where I vote, where my tax return comes, where the government thinks I live, and I couldn't have multiple ones of those in a community or a state. Is that correct?
Chairman Curcio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is correct.
Thank you.
Chair Lady. All right. Next up on our list is Representative Manish. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess this has been a week of conflict, especially when it comes to legislation like this, because, and the reason it's that way for me is my time in local government, I believe in local control, but then I go back and I truly believe in property rights. And from an owner-occupied standpoint, I think that you have a set of property rights that should be able to control that property. And if there are challenges within your neighborhood or your next door neighbor, those can be handled in ordinances. So, and the other thing that's concerning to me is we put things in place and then the rules of the game, so to speak, continue to change. And when those rules change, it could impact your property values negatively. So I go back and say it's a tough decision for me, just due to local control, but I think I will be erring on the property rights side of this and support this legislation.
Chairman Kosar, you have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would just thank the member for his support.
Representative Thompson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to reflect my agreement with Chairman Zachary on this issue, and also that I believe that the city leaders, the council, aldermen, or whatever, at each municipality knows the needs of that municipality better than the General Assembly as a whole, and I feel that their decision should be the predominant one here. So I'll be voting no on this.
Chairman Curcio. Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to my good friend, Chairman Zachary, I appreciate you mentioning the two communities that I serve, Collierville and Germantown. It's my understanding that this bill already precludes their involvement in this. And so I look at it from a different standpoint, and being involved in land use and being involved in land development in my day job, there are principles that are applied through the general land use principles, and one of them is what's deemed a non-conforming use. And a non-conforming use is a use that was established, and another provision for it is known as grandfathered in. And so whenever you have a non-conforming use in an area, typically you are allowed to continue that non-conforming use until you choose to end it, or the person you sell the property to decides to end it. But you're allowed to expand it. You are allowed to renovate it. You're allowed to do many things to non-conforming uses, and that use continues on until it is concluded. It seems as if in the past, in some areas of the state, that principle was not followed, that the non-conforming use terminated upon a sale. The zoning was changed and the ordinances changed to where that was not respected. And in this case, I see this bill as adhering to the principles of nonconformity. And it's something that property owners have to be assured that the same rights that they have in one part of our state are valid in other parts of the state. And that's been my whole problem with this. And because, hey, I've been a local school board member, I want local control, and I deal with local government bodies in the communities I serve all the time on land use matters. And I respect their control of that. But there are overriding principles of land use and property rights that in some cases have not been respected. And I see this bill here when it does not cause harm to communities that, or does not change the rules on communities that follows the rules that we set up, it allows them to carry on the way that they are. But for the people who switch the rules around in midstream on people, this looks like a reset of it. And so I would certainly not do anything to jeopardize the position of the folks that I represented. But again, they played by the rules, and so they should be fine with this bill. But for those who played fast and loose with land use principles, then I think that sometimes we have to intervene and step in and set things back. And that's what it seems as if this bill is attempting to do. With that, I'll hold my comments.
Chairman Curcio, do you have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just say that that's exactly right. He's hit the nail on the head.
Members, is there anyone else has a question for Chairman Curcio on his bill? If not, we are voting to send House Bill 2782 as amended to full commerce. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. No. The noes have it. Bill fails.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman and committee.
Next up is item number 9. It looks like Representative Hardaway has stepped out, so we're going to move to item number 13. That's House Bill 2346. I'm going to hand the gavel to Chairman Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you can all relax. I'm not charging overtime for this today. We are now dealing with House Bill 2346 by Chairman Boyd. Chairman Boyd, you are recognized. Motion.
Thank you, Chairman Vaughn.
And your bill is properly before us.
Thank you, Chairman Vaughn. And I have an amendment. Motion on the amendment. It's a drafting code 014380.
We are perfectly in sync, Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this amendment, which ultimately makes the bill does, is it would require utilities in the state of Tennessee to develop and implement a cybersecurity plan. Now, cybersecurity, this is something that we've been working on since earlier in the year, but recently, with a lot of the events going on in Ukraine and Russia, it has moved to the forefront. And so this is something that I believe is paramount. Now, what we're going to be doing, we don't actually need to see a copy. We believe that's proprietary information, but what we want is for the utilities to sign a certification each year and submit it to the regulatory authority. So that would be private utilities to TPUC, public utilities to the comptroller. A list would be generated, and that would be given to the General Assembly. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'll take any questions on the amendment.
All righty. Thank you, sir. Since the amendment does make the bill, first I'd like to get the amendment attached to the bill. Any questions on the amendment? Not seeing any. All those that want to put amendment 014380 onto the bill, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Bill is on, and so now we're on the bill itself. Anybody got any questions about cybersecurity today? Seeing none. We will vote on House Bill 2346. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Ayes have it. Sir, you have your gavel back.
Thank you, Chairman of Committee. Members, that brings us to the hill of the calendar, and that brings us to item number 9. That's House Bill 2811 by Representative Hardaway. Motion. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Representative Hardaway, you are recognized on your bill.
Do what? Oh. I'm sorry, I was lollygagging.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, with your permission and the permission of the members. I want to give you an idea of what the bill is and what the genesis was for the bill. And then I'm going to ask to roll it to next week. I'll be brief. The bill, as written, is designed to make available to those who trust government agencies who regulate certain professions that the information that they assume is correct. This bill came to me because of the murder of a gentleman at a gas station, merely because there was some back and forth between him and an armed security guard about loud music. Subsequently, after the investigation, there was some kind of accusation about which company he worked for, whether he actually worked for a company, whether he owned a company that he was holding out of Mississippi as being a company. It was really confusing. The only thing we know for sure is the man he shot is dead. He was indicted. Initially, he was charged with second-degree murder. Later, he was indicted for first-degree murder, and the case is still active. However, the problem that this bill is designed to solve is even greater than that. It's about how businesses can rest assured that when they hire an armed security guard, that security guard, how he or she holds himself out in terms of their experience, in terms of their qualifications, their training, that it's legit. That means that the department has to not create, but needs to maintain and refine the database that they use to keep up with the licensure. So this bill, hopefully, Mr. Chairman, will save lives. It will save a lot of confusion. I had individuals who came to me, former law enforcement officers, telling me about the confusion that they run into, still run into, in the streets, where they're not sure if a security guard is a security guard, if they're licensed security guards, rather, because they don't feel like they can check their ID, check their license. So that's something I want to tweak in an amendment, along with the requirement for submitting a mental evaluation. The amendment that I will bring to you next week will require that the applicant will submit a mental health evaluation, and he or she would pay for it, and the department would be responsible for ensuring that the company or individual that administered that evaluation was approved on an approved list. So, Mr. Chairman, that's it. Pending any questions today, I would ask for a roll to next week.
Representative Hardaway, we will honor that request, and without objection, House Bill 2811 is rolled 1 week.
Thank you, sir. And I want to thank the department for working with me.
Members, that concludes our business today. Without objection, this meeting is adjourned.